So the last piece to our strategy discussion is going to go through three basic questions. So once we have that vision, we have that mission statement, so we specifically know what our contribution is going to be, our value to our customers, and how that impacts our environment, and then that bigger aspirational vision. Then we need to understand what our strategy is. So how are we going to achieve that mission? There are three basic questions. One, understanding what business we're in, right? So if we have that vision and that mission, it should be clear. But a part of having that clarity is being able to determine what's our focus and what is not our focus. The famous strategic thinker, Michael Porter from Harvard School, is very famous for saying, the biggest part of strategy is understanding what you're not going to do. So being able to say, that's not a part of our core competencies, that's not helping us achieve our mission, so we're not going to do that. So understanding and having clarity about what business you're in. Secondly, how will you compete? So whether you're in a blue ocean kind of situation where there's not competition, that's wonderful. Eventually somebody is going to come in and you will have competition, even if you have a blue ocean strategy. And for most organizations currently, they're competing in kind of these red oceans where there's a lot of very fierce competition. So given that environment, how will resources be allocated and deployed? And last but not least, how will our organization, whatever that is, when faced with competition, achieve superior performance? So what's our values in terms of what we expect from our organization and providing that value for the customer, but how, from an operational standpoint, what are those things that we're going to focus on to make sure that we can continuously improve and deliver that value for customers in a particular area? So again, red ocean strategies is focused on competition and creating that competitive advantage, whereas blue ocean strategies are on creating that new market opportunity. Irrespective of kind of which kind of strategy you're using as you think about growth or a decision or a new market opportunity, it's some kind of tried and true models are the SWOT analysis, which is exploiting opportunities and strengths, neutralizing threats, and avoiding weaknesses. There's a great video clip from Silicon Valley where they go through and use a SWOT analysis. At least Jared tries to bring it out and get the team to go through and use a SWOT analysis. So it's something that you'll probably hear again in one of your other classes and is still taught extensively in business school. And it's useful, but again, there's also a component to kind of trying to innovate and kind of break down some of the assumptions. But even if you're trying to find a new market opportunity, something like a SWOT analysis is going to be great to go through and understand what your challenges are, what your customers are frustrated with, and potentially finding those new market opportunities. Another model is Porter's 5 Forces model. Again, Michael Porter, and this is his quote, "The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do." He has yet another model that really tries to evaluate the environment. So understanding who your industry rivals are. There's also other forces that will indicate where there's new market opportunities or help you determine where you should be focusing versus where you should not be focusing and maybe outsourcing or not being in that part of the business. The bargaining powers of suppliers, the bargaining power of buyers. Those are two forces that you're going to constantly be kind of trying to manage. And then there's always the threat of new entrants coming into your industry or the threat of substitutes. So what is kind of this, an alternative product or service that basically could meet the customer's need in a different way? So the second strategy question, how will we compete, is really kind of brings us to, again, that red ocean strategy type thinking, but really focused on creating a competitive advantage. So if we know that eventually there will be competition, we can compete in three main ways: differentiation, cost leadership, and response. So differentiation is having a product or service that is just fundamentally unique and different from anything else that's out there. So we can think about things like Lush products, which have really kind of taken off because they use organic products. These face creams are perishable, and they kind of have, they have pictures of the people who actually kind of created the products on the product. So that's caught on. It's very different from anything else in the beauty industry that's been out there so far. Things like Etsy, which is tailored towards that kind of DIY kind of craft space. And then things like Apple, in terms of having all of your devices being interconnected and having that usability, that interface. Those are all things that have allowed these organizations to be so successful, because there wasn't another organization that was able to kind of compete in that specific and unique way. You could also compete on costs, so creating that competitive advantage by having the lowest cost. And organizations that kind of automatically come to mind are, Walmart, IKEA, and then Spirit Airlines. You can go from, upstate New York to California for sometimes less than $100, but you're not going to have all of the services that you might come to expect from other airlines, like being able to, bring a carry-on or have luggage, or get some sort of snack or beverage, or having any entertainment. Your seats are also going to be tighter, right? So it's all of these things. It changes the way the service is delivered, but they're able to have loyal clientele because that price point is so low. And then other companies that compete on response. So that's being able to deliver a product or service faster than anybody else. Sometimes it means that you're able to customize a product or service. So again, kind of having that responsive kind of piece to the customer. And some organizations that we can think of are GoDaddy, in terms of, if you've got a website, their support services are fast and reliable. Jimmy John's, even though we don't have a lot of Jimmy John's in upstate New York, we do get a lot of their commercials, and they always emphasize the fact that the response is just so fast. Whenever you order something, you can have it within 10 minutes. And of course, Amazon, with Prime membership, has completely revolutionized our expectations in terms of how fast, once we order something online, how fast we expect it will be at our doorstep. So those are the ways we compete or create a competitive advantage. And the third strategy question, again, is how will our organization achieve superior results? And a part of that piece of strategy is making sure that you've got very well-defined goals, SMART goals, right, that are specific, measurable, and timely too. You want to be able to make sure that you're making progress in a certain amount of time. This will help you identify your core competencies, the things that you're really good at and that you should continue to work on, versus things that you might want to consider outsourcing. So as we think about how we're able to kind of continuously improve and create that value for the customer, we want to be pulling in lean methodologies, and really at the heart of it is the scientific method. This is something called the improvement kata, which models really the kind of scientific process that we use when we innovate, but it's something that organizations that are really good at strategic planning are capable of doing, having very well-defined metrics and goals, and making little experiments to help them get a little bit closer, right? Not all are going to go in your favor or take you in the right direction, but course correcting, and know that failure is just a part of the process, trying something new and seeing if it can help you, again, get better in terms of competing on cost, response, differentiation, or potentially experimenting to find a completely new market opportunity. So the way this works is, first and foremost, you would have a goal or challenge, which should and could correspond with your mission. But then, as you're looking at kind of a department level focus, understanding what are those core operational metrics you want to achieve, putting a challenge out there in terms of what you want to do, how fast, how much you want to reduce your delivery time or your cost, or if you're talking about quality or patient safety, right? If you have your current numbers, putting a far-reaching goal out there saying we want to, reduce the number of quality defects by 50% within 30 days, right? Putting something out there that's challenging, but also something that's achievable. So once you have that goal and direction, you understand and grasp the current condition, not only understanding the metric as it currently is, but understanding your processes that essentially enable the achievement of whatever your current metric is. And then once you have that goal of where you want to be, where you currently are, then making experiments and kind of finding your way to getting to that goal or challenge over time. It's all part of the continuous improvement process. And as you make progress, it's always good to stop and say, okay, I have a new current condition. I'm going to set a target condition for, the next 3 days in terms of the improvements that I want to make. And it should all, again, get you a little bit closer to that end goal. So as you start to experiment and as you have those objectives, again, another key piece of this is understanding where is your organization excel, and what are some of those things that you want to outsource. So every organization, you've got all of your resources. which, you know, go along with what your capabilities are. So in terms of logistics, in terms of your expertise, and really you have to ask the question, does this help, you know, do our resources and our capabilities help us create that competitive advantage? If it does, if it's something that you're really good at and you know that you're, you know, using the continuous improvement process, you're getting better at, that then becomes a core competency. That's a strategic capability that you want to try to get better at, exploit, and grow. If it's not, if you're not able to make that progress, and there are other organizations out there that can do it a lot better than you can, then it becomes really just a capability, a non-strategic focus, and possibly a place where you might want to consider outsourcing. So again, outsourcing is the transfer of activities to external suppliers, and you might want to do this because somebody has better, you know, technological expertise, has better production operations, and can produce things that are reliable and at a cheaper rate. So there's a lot of different reasons why you might want to outsource. Some of the common outsourced activities, obviously, are legal services, things like payroll. A number of our students in the School of Business go to work for Paychex, which does payroll. You can outsource production. Obviously, there's a lot of production that's outsourced overseas. So all of these companies, every company outsources, some more than others. SpaceX outsources a lot, works with a lot of different suppliers to create their components, and kind of creating, you know, those relationships with your supplier base is a part of also what makes some companies so successful, because they're able to continue to work with their suppliers, help their suppliers improve their quality and productivity without taking on all of that responsibility themselves. The theory of comparative advantage is that if an external provider can perform an activity better than you can, then they should be doing the work. You should find those things, those strategic focus areas where your organization excels, and you should continue to do work in that area while letting other companies and organizations outsource those activities that they can do better than you can. Some risks of outsourcing, obviously some disadvantages would be increased logistics and inventory costs, especially if you've got a global supply chain. Some loss of control in terms of quality and delivery. You're going to be relying on a lot more people than you would if you had everything in-house. You know, sometimes if certain aspects of the company that were once in-house are then transitioned to be outsourced, that can have, you know, a negative impact on morale. And you might not know some of those risks. It's just the unknown of working, you know, having a big supplier base. There could be risks that you don't know until they present themselves. On the advantages side, though, there are cost savings to be had. You're gaining outside expertise, so you're allowing those organizations, that supplier base, to deliver and to continue to refine their core competencies that will eventually make your product or service better. You're improving your operations and service while maintaining a focus on your core competencies. So these are all pieces that we'll be considering again now as we work through the remainder of the semester, in terms of knowing what our core competencies are. How can we think through supply chain management, inventory control, project management, quality improvement, so that we can take those things that we do really well and do them a little bit better.